Welcome to the Cheat Code Corner, where we hit you with the cheat codes to help you advance in the areas that you care about. I'm your host, DC, and today we have an incredibly special guest today. We have Rahul Bhansali, who is a venture engineer, which I didn't even know existed. What's up, Rahul? How you feeling, man?
I'm good. Good. Thank you for having me,
man. I'm stoked, man, because I've known you for a little bit of time now, but your roles have evolved over time, and now you're in this one. And I'll never forget, like, when I asked, I was like, oh, well, what have things have been doing? What are you doing? And are you a venture capitalist or are you a venture engineer? Because you invest in companies. And so I was curious when you said venture engineer, I was just like, okay. What is right? What is that? Because it sounds familiar, but it doesn't at the same time.
Yeah. It's wild because it's a term that we came up with not too long ago. And when I say we, I mean myself and my partners in the fund, right? But my main partner actually came up with it. He's built 6 companies and he's sold a bunch, and he's this phenomenal medical tools guy. We have a joke that he's good at everything he does, so don't let him play basketball because he'll just kill you. So I mean, it's like he's just amazing at everything, right? And so he went through this whole journey of building a number of companies. And in that journey of building a number of companies, found out through kind of this hard knock method that there's kind of these multiple challenges, right? That the issue with building companies is, right now it's the best time to build a company in the history of probably the world, right? There's a ridiculous amount of money out there that understands the counterintuitive process of building a company, and understands it so much that they're willing to invest in it and put hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars into building those companies. That is an unbelievable place to be as an entrepreneur who wants to build things that are going to have national, global scale. You can do that. You can do that. The issue is that the process of venture capital doesn't work for every industry. It doesn't work for every space.
Okay.
And it doesn't, and it's a constantly evolving process. And what I've been seeing for the last few years, and I'm hearing this from investors who invest into venture capital funds. I'm hearing this from entrepreneurs who want to build companies. I'm hearing this from entrepreneurs who've built a number of companies, that there is a disconnect between the way companies are funded and the way companies are built. And that disconnect didn't necessarily exist 10 years ago, but now that disconnect is becoming more and more obvious. And like good entrepreneurs, the folks that build the funding companies, like venture capitalists, are now responding, and they're building different methods of investing. And one of those methods is, Venture Studios. So I think it's For Him. It's a really awesome company, and they're built out of, I'm forgetting the name of the group, out of the Bay, and it's a venture studio, and they've output a whole bunch of awesome companies, and they've got teams within their venture studio that just jump on different projects, and they apply their product development team or they apply their marketing team. That's just a whole bunch of rock stars to build on a project basis, to dive into one of their portfolio companies, one at a time, and just, help them rocket fuel that one component or that one portion of their business. And they have a lot of efficiencies that come along with that. And that's venture studios. What I've heard about also is that there are early exit funds. Exit funds are funds that basically invest in the companies, all with the intention of exiting really early. And investors love those because, it aligns one of the big things that investors are always looking for, which is, we'd rather not wait 5 to 8 years to see an exit. We want to see something within 2 to 5 years or 1 to 3 years. And for investors, it means money in their hands sooner. For entrepreneurs, it oftentimes means less dilution, so more money in their hands sooner. Oftentimes it can mean lower risk, against failure of a company.
So, quick question. So what was then the biggest differences then? So before venture capitalists, they just kind of the way that they invested in companies and the timeline for that was a lot longer. And so now with these, this different approach, it's a lot quicker, and you're just trying to get a company from 0 to that to this being like purchased? Okay, so that's just a fundamental different of approach in terms of now there's different focus areas for these venture capitalists or venture engineers. Is that the difference?
Yeah. So venture capital, and there's data out there about this, right? I think venture capital is awesome. I have nothing bad to say about it. I think it fits in certain spaces, but the data says that, 80-90% of the companies that they invest in are going to fail. They're not going to produce an exit.
Okay.
The data also shows that it's around 1%, slightly more, that produce 60% of the returns that venture capital fund is going to produce.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, you flip that, let's flip that the other way around from the entrepreneur's perspective. There's an 80-90% chance that your company is going to fail.
Yeah.
And if we follow certain, and the reality is, though, not every company deserves to fail, right? Not every company deserves to fail. A lot of companies, and the way a lot of venture capital works is that they need to invest in companies that are going to pay back massive funds, right? A $400 or $500 million fund.
Wow.
I need to have companies that are going to produce billion-dollar exits, multi-billion-dollar exits, so that me as a venture capital fund, I can have one or two or a few of those that can pay back my fund and give me a 3x return over 8 to 10 years. Right? That's the way that the business works. But not every company deserves to fail, right? You can have companies that sell for 20, 30, 40 million dollars. And those are great companies, and the world deserves to see those. Right? And so venture engineering is take a piece of everything that I just said, and that's what venture engineering is. We're early exit. So we get into companies with the intention of exiting really soon, and that's good for the entrepreneur. It's good for the investor. It's good for us. We're exiting at an early point, and there's more reasons for that, right? We do a thing that a lot of other folks don't do, is we involve acquirers very early. We have really honest conversations with acquirers, and we say, you know what, there's a great company, it's a great technology. What do you think? Would you buy this if we can get it to X point? Awesome. That's great. We also take a look at only game-changing, awesome technology. So we'll go to universities, we'll go to grant-funded institutions, and we'll pick up technologies that are really, really phenomenal technologies that are just gathering dust or maybe haven't found the right investor yet.
Yeah.
And we'll build a team around that with people that have a lot of gravitas in the space that technology represents. That's another thing that we reckon. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say, so what it sounds like to me then is it's like historically with the venture capitalists and things, it was more like they went after the whales, right? Those are the whales, right? And they just kind of hoped that one whale was going to subsidize all of the investments, where you guys are like, hey, look, there's all these, I don't want to call it low hanging fruit, but there's all these opportunities where with the right expertise, with the right team, with the right insight, with the right resources, we can get some wins here. And so you guys are on volume. So with this, has this changed, this whole venture engineer approach that you're kind of talking about? Has this has been going on like the last 10 years mostly? Has this been going on for a lot longer? And how many companies would you say, I mean, you personally, or with the fund that you work with, I mean, how many companies can you like manage at a time?
Those are awesome questions. So one, it's only been around for 6 or 7 years. I mean, Gary, my partner, is he created the idea, he created the approach, and he's kind of the quintessential venture engineer. And so, my experience and my path has taught me a number of the same lessons through my own direct experience of building my own companies prior to becoming a venture engineer. And the same goes for Adam, my third partner. And, together we've kind of come together under this idea that we can take venture engineering to the next level. So yeah, it's only been around for a few years, right? And we're, our goal is to create an entire category of investing, right? We want the rest of the world to benefit from this approach because it's working for us, right? I mean, we've got a number of companies in our portfolio, and we're seeing the success. We're seeing success stories, kind of laid out there, and it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
So, but that said, it's a much more concentrated portfolio, right? So you'll see a fund with $50 million might have, 30 companies in their portfolio, 40 companies maybe in their portfolio can have that many. Some situations you might see a little bit more, you might see a little bit less. For someone like us, we're going to be a lot more concentrated. We may only do we may only do 20 on a $50 million portfolio.
Right. You guys are laser focused then, basically, on those and giving your. So then it sounds like then too, and you talked a little bit about, I was going to ask, because look, I mean, again, I think the idea of being a venture engineer, I mean, sounds super interesting because I love the focus to it. I love the fact that, you know what I mean? It's early exit, you get in, do what you can, and you get out. But I was curious to know how you got into that, because you did mention that you've started a few companies, right? And you've been on the boards of a few companies. So, I mean, if someone's thinking about, well, let me just take a step back, actually. How did you kind of get started in this?
So, I mean, you know this, right? But I got to go back a little bit further, right? But I was born in the suburbs of Chicago and I moved to India when I was 13. And my dad built a bunch of businesses, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of just being around that, I think I was destined to not be satisfied with the 9 to 5. It's just a way of, I grew up seeing that, right? I grew up seeing him build stuff.
Yep.
And so that was always kind of running the back of my mind. I went, after Penn State, I went to work in an investment bank, and I did some pretty awesome work there, right? And every, I realized that I rest on the lessons that I learned in those 4 years in so many ways. So often I rest on those lessons, right? And it's brought me enough baseline skill that I can produce value for a lot of that I've been able to produce value for people. So a lot of hard skills, right? Like I learned how to build a spreadsheet, right? And I learned how to build a model. I learned how to solve complex financial, concerns relating to portfolio operations, hedge fund portfolio operations. Just sitting there, right, and kind of running through the operational tasks necessary. There was, I was a risk analyst on hedge fund products, right? So there were aspects of risk management that I was doing there, and there was just a ton of hard skills that came out of it. But still, while I was doing that, I built 2 nonprofits on the side, and I was doing a whole bunch of other stuff because I knew I was not truly satisfied with that 9 to 5. I wanted to keep doing things. So I helped raise money for the Obama campaign. I helped, the One campaign. My buddies and I built a nonprofit raising money for other nonprofits. We were just, doing stuff because, and the wild thing was, I wasn't the only person in the room that felt that kind of discomfort. It was just that pain was so strong for me that I found the only way I could alleviate that pain of sitting in a 9 to 5 was just doing something about it, right? And building stuff and doing stuff.
So I love
that. It wasn't some sort of inspirational thing. It was just I was trying to mitigate the fact that I was hurting.
Yeah. So I mean, there's 2 things that really that I want to dive into that I think is kind of interesting, because I've been hearing to some degree some consistent themes among some of my friends who are entrepreneurs and things like that have started, which is that there is this, it is an approach to life. It is a mindset, this entrepreneurial stuff, where you're like, hey, look, 9 to 5 can be cool, but I need to do more. I want to build something. I want to solve a problem. I mean, so do you think that comes, of course, that can be learned. We know that already, right? Through school and things like that. But do you think that those seeds need to be planted there early? In order for people to be kind of super successful and kind of have that? Or do you think, I'm just kind of curious to kind of get your take on that, because you said you had that exposure early.
Dude, you're hitting it right on the head again. So I was at a friend's wedding a few years ago in Udaipur, and I was hanging out with a very, very successful entrepreneur in an airport. This is a family friend of ours, and just walking around with him, and I was hanging out with my friend's uncle, and this somehow the conversation came up about do you have to be born with it to be a great entrepreneur?
Yeah,
and the very, very successful entrepreneur, he is next level, and he said, you got to be born with it. You got to have that fire. You got to be built with the tiger instinct to become an entrepreneur. And I'm like, okay, that's a familiar story. And that sounds really familiar. And that's okay, I feel you. That probably is it. And in the back of my head, I'm checking, that must be me, right? Is that me? Because I'm really hoping and praying that's me, right? And then I'm talking to, but then my friend's uncle kind of interjects and he's like, well, I respectfully disagree. I think that becoming a phenomenal entrepreneur has to do with how well you manage fear. And how well you manage fear, not in the way that you show others, but how well you manage fear on your internal processes,
Oh yeah.
on your subconscious level. How do you manage that fear? Because if you can manage that fear and you can eliminate those fears, I think everybody feels the pain that I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody feels that pain. And nobody wants to sit in a job that they don't like. Some people love their job, and that's great. Don't leave that, right? Don't leave that. But there's some crazy stat like 85% of Americans hate their job.
Hate their job, not even dislike.
Hate their job.
Right,
Like
hate is
4-letter word hate.
Yeah. Man, I really like it's kind of interesting. And, there's probably people that are on both sides to it. They probably say there are some people that kind of lean towards things, and some people naturally have a higher risk tolerance than others. So I do think that there is something around that. But I think a lot of that stuff you can be learned. I was not a reader, bro, growing up. Like I had bad eyes, and I pushed through Penn State kind of with the reading. You know what I mean? But I read the least amount possible. You know what I mean? I read enough. I read enough to get good grades, but I wasn't reading anything extra. And then after I got my MBA as well, you're in the real world, and I just had this urge to read more after doing some serious reading. And so now I read a book, a book a month and all these articles and stuff. But so I think you can learn and grow into these things, but it can be tough. But you have to have something that you hate. I mean, I can just speak for myself. When I think about, entrepreneur stuff sounds kind of cool. I'm a little bit conservative, and that not having consistent cash can be tough. Yeah. However, I do believe, let's say since I'm lucky enough to have enough investments that you can it'll pay the rent, I'll feel more comfortable trying more stuff when there's a certain baseline there.
Oh, yeah.
And in that case, then, I'm not an entrepreneur by nature, but I could probably get into trying to solve problems if I have that baseline level of support, right? This is probably going to be it's a dumb question, but would you say that having that figuring out what that baseline level of support, whether it's credit cards, whether it's a spouse, whether it's mom and dad, would you say that that's a critical element to getting sorted out before really jumping in to not just venture capitalism, but just like entrepreneurship and things like that? Is that something where you say you better click that box?
I think the critical element is having gone through some sort of major failure first as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And my guess is, and my thought is, I watched this awesome movie recently, which was like Love and Bugs or something or other. I forget what it's called, but they said this great thing, like if you can survive a few mistakes, you'll develop an instinct. And I'm like, wow, this is, It was a campy movie and it was a ton of fun, but that was some golden age wisdom. Right? That's some that's really powerful wisdom. And then I'm thinking, full disclosure, my first business that I started, my parents and I built a business together, and we burned a ridiculous amount of money. I made a ton of money at the beginning, and then I lost a ton of money, and we burned a ton of money trying to build that business. And it was looking back on it, I still walked away slightly positive, which was nice, but through the process, we still had some losses in different places and all that. And,
was that the iron ore business? Were you?
Yeah.
Right? You invested in iron ore.
This is what I get. This is what I get for talking to a guy who knows everything I've done. So yeah, I was in the commodity business, right? Commodity business, right? So I was traveling between the Philippines, India, Chile, and the States, building the commodity transactions. So I was doing financial and operational plans for miners and manufacturers all over the world. And it was the most brutal set of lessons I've ever learned. I made a bunch of money in the beginning, and then I lost a bunch of money. I still walked away slightly positive in some regards, in terms of just revenue streams, but I still burned a bunch of money kind of on the latter end.
Yeah.
And, it was 3 years of a very compressed learning cycle.
Crazy period. Yeah.
I got the big hit from making money, and I got the small hit from losing money. And it was like, this is, and the interest, and I got the deflated ego, I should say, from losing, right? And it's like,
learning today.
Right. And the wild thing was that I think that's the crucial thing. And so if my thought with anyone is if you can build a business while you got your day job, and failure is not necessary, right? But it is inevitable that you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the question mark is, and this is where I talk about meditation too much, right? Don't mind me if I do, but the thing is, like, a key part of meditating and successful meditation in my mind is embracing the emotional knots that arise, because it's those emotional knots that arise that end up becoming they're a gift, right? They're a gift. You are now observing that you're now feeling the pain of this emotional knot that you forgot about. And now by feeling that pain, you have an opportunity to be free of it for the rest of your life if you deal with it. And the same thing goes for mistakes, right? Here I am building my first business. Inevitably, the emotional knot that comes from having made a terrible mistake. I have a t-shirt business. I'm selling it at a stall, in a farmer's market or a summer market. And I bought too many t-shirts, and I'm $3,000 short that I don't even have. Right. And okay, the pain that comes from that lesson, as long as it's not a fatal as long as it's not fatal. So you got to be smart about it, right? Don't make fatal mistakes, but
try not to make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah, and trying to make it twice. But like, if that lesson can be welcomed internally, not externally, not like, oh, I'm telling my friends, oh, I accept that mistake or whatever. Internally, if that can be welcomed, then what you've done is you've taken 4 steps forward on the entrepreneurial path rather than 1 step forward. Wow. The degree to which you welcome a mistake has an exponential effect in how many steps forward you've taken on the entrepreneurial journey. And every entrepreneurial journey is paved with mistakes. The mistakes are the path, right? So the goal is I think one of the best ways to get started is, figure out what is not going to create fatal mistakes. Go out and build it, and then as those mistakes come, with try your damn hardest, right, and to build something that can make sense, right, and get advice and talk to dozens of people, right, talk to as many people as you can. When those mistakes inevitably come, soak into them, right, and then I think the second big lesson, and this is probably just as important as the first, is the more people you talk to and have ancillary conversations with that you think are not going to be valuable conversations, but just you have conversations with. A lot of people don't want to tell their business ideas to people. Most people don't care, right? Most people are not going to do anything with their business, right? So go out and talk to potential competitors if you can. Go out and talk to potential people who could become part of your team in the future. Go out and talk to, institutions. And if you're selling t-shirts, go out and talk to Threadless, right? Go out and talk to Nike. People are going to have conversations with you, right? Go out and have conversations, and you'll be surprised how often people are willing to have conversations, just be open with you. And go out and talk to, and then at the end of that, go out and sell what you've learned to a few people before you even have it. And a lot of people don't do this, but if you go out and you sell what you've already come up with, and tell me if I'm talking too much, man.
No. Well, listen, I'm listening to you, right? And the reason why it's so crazy is because I've spoken. A friend of mine started a real estate investment fund. Another one of my friends started a PR firm. He's a nonprofit and some other business. And I was asking them about their cheat codes, and there's one that all 3 of you guys said, which was number 1 is to start your business like as a side hustle, or like while you still have a job or something, so you can kind of learn it and it's not so disruptive to your life. That was number 1. And then, in some ways you've kind of mentioned it, but I really want to dive into this one, which is socializing your business and talking about it. We all know the idea of like when you're starting a business and things, obviously you want to like lean on the people in your family, your friends, you want to lean on the people, the community. But I've never actually heard of somebody who's used it like directly, like what you're saying, which is as a cheat code, as an action item. Like, listen, talk to as many people as you can, whether it's people in the space, outside the space, people that may be able to help you that are not, because they can give you insight, they can give you help, you can get resources, help, you know what I mean? You can get all of that and then take that information and then try and then sell it. That's powerful, man. That's powerful. No one says that. Let me ask you, why do you think why do you think it's often not common knowledge, or maybe it is in certain areas, but why do you think that's not a key checklist point when you're on the way to becoming an entrepreneur? Like, why don't you think people know that they should talk to a lot of people, everybody, and just kind of socialize that? Why do you think that's the case?
I think this comes back to a lot of fear stuff, right? Like I'm building. So, here, when I was sitting at my investment bank job, right, I was in this mindset, and this mindset that I was in it had a certain set of parameters to it. And I was just comfortable in that space. Yeah. Right. And then this idea of breaking out of it, and everybody around me was comfortable in their space.
Of course.
And the wild thing is I felt deep-seated fear that there was no other place for me to make money from, or do anything, that I would be able to do anything to make money from outside of this job.
So you felt
if I lost this job or something like that, I felt like there was no other place for me. I was afraid of that unknown. Yeah. And that fear cakes year after year. It just cakes, man. Yeah. And it gets heavier and heavier. And the wild thing is that the job of an entrepreneur, the times where I was broke in the last 3 years, this happened to me, right? On 2 or 3 occasions, I realized I'm losing a few contracts. And I'm not going to have any money coming in a month. And I got a baby, and we got all this stuff. And so I realized I am now facing the inner juice of the universe, man. This is like I am now on the highway. I am on the universal highway, and the only thing between me and utter failure, and me and total and actually success, is how real I am in this moment. How honest and real I am, how centered I am, how lacking imagination and just pretending I am. I have to not have that pretending, and I have to be fully in this moment, fully doing this. Yeah. And when I was doing that, I realized there's only one thing that I can do, which is sprint like hell. Just sprint. Go out and talk to people. And I did that. I had 100 conversations. I had 100 lunches. And I put that stuff on my credit card, right? But it was fine because that is what led to a number of future contracts, right? It led to contracts. It led to a business built, all these things, right?
Amazing. It's great, man. That's dope. That's
having a range. Yeah. But it's wild, dude, because it's like, and the wild thing is like, I realized sitting in my company that caking of fear was removing me from that the juice of the universe, the superhighway of the universe, right? It was removing me from that experience.
Yeah, it's the comfort there takes you like that cover, right?
Right.
That cover. Yeah. So then you don't. Yeah. So it's not that kick in the teeth that, you know what I mean? Like, because when you're faced with challenges and things, when you really bark down, you actually see what you're made of, and that kick in the teeth is what can help you to grow, right? That can help you to grow. And like you learned a cheat code from that. Last year, with the COVID and everything, it's so crazy. Last year, and I think I had mentioned this to you, a lot of my clients were in healthcare. And so a lot of the clients that I had would target healthcare companies, and you're not going to target a hospital in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, totally.
So my portfolio of business started to crumble crazy. And, half of my compensation is commission. So it makes up a pretty big. And I'll never forget, I was looking at, and I'd seen this happen, obviously in 2008, 2010, like, I'd already seen this type of stuff happen. Like, and I'll just never forget, I said, well, I'm going to crank it up. Going to have to do six days a week. And I'm going to do that until something happens, whether I break, right? I'm going to do that until I break. Or these clients, like something happens on the client side. It's one of the two, but I know it was going to be either or. And I told myself, and I said, you know what? I'm going to be good with either option, because I would have known that if it failed and then I get fired and I don't, you know what I mean? And then I'll just dip into savings, but I knew I was going to crank it up and that cranking, right? That cranking, which was a good 6 months of 6 days a week cranking, set the stage for all the contracts I have right now. You know what I mean? And I'm going to be almost contracted for the year very soon. And like, I'm having one of the best years I've ever had. But in the midst of it, when you're on that highway,
right. It's brutal.
It's tough.
It's brutal.
It's tough, man. Couldn't sleep, panic attacks, all that, man. I was hurting. I was like, man, this thing's going to kill me. You know what I mean? But if you can make it out of it, it is so valuable. You become a better person. You truly grow out of that. It is real. It is real.
So getting that down as much as you can, great thing if it's possible, right?
Yeah. But that's strategically knowing, though. I think, listen, you got to also understand, Rahul, like that this is where that entrepreneurial mindset comes into play, where like, it's like, hey, look, you need to figure out stuff so that you can free up more time to work on this big stuff.
Right.
That's different, because no one ever, you're oftentimes just stuck in the short term, got to get this cash, this and that. It's hard to kind of free up and understand your time. I mean, dude, like, I'll just think about it like this. I mean, I've been grinding with my day job, and like I'd done some volunteer work on the side and things like that, but it had occupied so much time because I was trying to pay off school debt, grad school, undergrad. So when that's happening, the world is cloudy. Yeah. And I knew that I wanted to pay that stuff off. I mean, it took over 10 years is because, I knew just that once I came off, a lot of things would happen. And the biggest thing, which no one ever tells you unless you do it, it frees up your mind. You have so much more mental real estate. When that debt is gone, you have so much more mental real estate to start thinking about different things. That's how cheat codes actually arose, is because I wasn't worrying about making this $500-$600 payment on top of everything else. And so then I was able to do more. And I think just you talking about it, it's kind of a knowledge tip, but I think it is a cheat code to some degree as well, in the sense that it's be strategic in the way that if you can figure out ways to alleviate these short-term concerns, it will free up time for you to think, be creative, to work on things to work on the whales, to find a whale, to invest in a whale. You know what I mean? Those are the things. And I love cheat codes, man. I think that those are super powerful, man. Like, I was just, because that success, man, success is like, when you hear success and truth, it all kind of sticks together, man,
It's so true, man.
Well, listen, man, I really appreciate the time. We have just a few more minutes, and I really want to see. I told you I was going to want you to come back on the show. I know. Because I knew it was going to be good. I knew it was going to be good. I knew, and we were just touching the surface. But for this episode, us talking about you being, a venture engineer, and I really, you providing 3 cheat codes, which I'll put, in a recap. But what I would love to do in these next couple of minutes is, there's a segment called Power Questions. Power Questions, man, it's 5 quick questions. It's designed just to give some insight about who you are, kind of fun. And so, you ready for them?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Number 1, how many hours of sleep do you get?
Oh man, not enough. Like 5, 4 to 5.
4 to 5 on average? Okay. Yeah. What does your diet look like?
It's awesome. My diet's great. I eat a bowl of cereal in the morning. I eat, I'm vegetarian, really low sugar, almost no sugar. And
this is consistently regardless of ups and downs.
Consistently. I was doing intermittent fasting for a while. Real solid. Yeah.
Very cool. Favorite, well, you might say I know the answer, but favorite activity to unwind besides meditation? I'm a video gamer, man. You're gamer. Okay. You got some time in. All right, cool. What's your favorite video game right now?
Right now, Ghost of Tsushima.
All right, very cool.
It's awesome.
Is that on the
PlayStation 4? It's the samurai fantasy I've always wanted. It's amazing.
All right, very cool. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
There's an obscure character, not super obscure, but his name is Prodigy, and he could learn the knowledge, skills, and abilities of all those in his immediate vicinity, within a mile or so. And I just loved it, because I think smarts is one thing, but a lot of people got that. But just knowing how to do things, I would just go hang out with every scientist in the world, man, and I would put all that stuff together, and then, you know,
very cool, man. Knowledge based, I like it. Well, know-how based. Know-how based is
know-how. It's
know-how based, because it's like knowledge, but know-how is different.
How to make stuff.
How to make stuff. I like that. And then the last one is, what are you reading or listening to?
I'm not reading, actually. I am reading. I'm reading Saga, the graphic novel.
All right, that counts.
That's awesome. Yeah, I am reading. Okay. That's amazing. Awesome.
All right, cool, man. Well, Rahul, man, I'm really, like I said before, I was stoked. I knew this convo was going to be dope, and like, thanks. I learned stuff about you today that I had no idea about. That's super fascinating information, man. Thank you so much for the time. I know you're busy. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, or if they wanted to better understand and learn more about venture engineering, like, how would they get in touch with you, or what are some resources that they could go to kind of learn more?
You can email me. That's totally cool. So I'm at rahul@indlak.com, indlak.com.
Okay.
Shoot me an email. I'd love to talk.
Very cool, man. Thanks for making your time available. Well, thanks again, once again, and hope to catch up with you soon, man.
Cool. All right. Take care.
All right, fam. Hopefully you enjoyed Rahul Bhansali's podcast, being a venture engineer, which I didn't even know that existed. So kind of like a venture capitalist, but they approach investing and building businesses slightly different, which I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't know any about that. So as it relates to the 3 cheat codes that I identified, now look, I wanted to also just say, like, maybe you guys took other things from the podcast, but I just thought the 3 things that were actionable, that were slightly different, or that you could actually put into place, were these 3 key points. So it's just my opinion on it. I'm sure people have other routes and ways of doing things, but these were the 3 things that came to mind that I thought were particularly important. So the first one, as he mentioned, was starting a business as a side hustle first, which I think a lot of people know that. But what he highlighted was the importance of, if you do start a business, try not to have it be too disruptive to your lifestyle. Some people, have the resources, or they can start a business. Like, they can just go all in. I have a few friends who started businesses, quit their jobs. So if you can do that, God bless you. I couldn't do that. So when you're starting a business, if you can, to do it as a side, that means, working after your normal job. You do the outside on the normal hours, or you do it on the weekends. But the key thing is, if you can have some consistent revenue coming in on one side, then that can feed the business. So I did that with cheat codes. Still had a full-time job while doing consulting and doing cheat codes at the same time. The next one that I thought was, he talked about building businesses and what have you, and how he's done it. But he talked about the importance of socializing your business. So what that means in particular is go out and having conversations with potential competitors, friends, family, coworkers, or people that you've worked with. Just really getting some feedback on their thoughts on the business, areas of opportunity, but having lots of conversations around that, and having those conversations with purpose. And this leads to the third cheat code, which you mentioned, which is, hey, look, after having those conversations, use that information you've learned from them to improve the product, to improve the pitch. We do that a lot with sales. I'm constantly speaking with folks and refining the pitch. But important is, a lot of the conversation that you can have, you will be able to get people's feedback, refine the pitch, improve the product, maybe push it, maybe it needs more development, and because you got a recommendation or what have you. So once again, hopefully those were helpful, but this is a quick recap. Start your business as a side hustle if you can, so it's not too disruptive. Had tons and tons of conversations from people about the business, talking to them about the product, even if you didn't bring it to the table yet. And then make sure that you categorize all that information that you got from those conversations to improve the product. All right, well, that's it for me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode, and hope to talk to you soon.